Hello everyone, Dave here, with some more thoughts on a bunch of knives for you guys tonight. Tonight we're going to take a look at the Tanto blade, okay? It's more specifically the Western or Americanized Tanto blade, as it's commonly referred to. Excuse me. With like a lot of things out there in this world, generalizations tend to take place, and even within a particular genre of knife, there's a lot of differences, a lot of differentiating factors, even among one type of what's normally, I guess, grouped together as one type of blade. So tonight I'm going to try and introduce you to, maybe you've thought about them, seen them before, but just some different aspects of various Tantos. And I decided to pick these guys out of the collection because I think they exhibit some of the things that you know, I just like to discuss. So just to start out, when we normally think about the Americanized or Westernized Tanto, or Tanto blade as they're advertised for the most part, right? That's how you're going to see the blade design. We normally, two things come to mind: a knife with a double edge, essentially a main edge, and then a secondary or leading edge, sometimes referred to either way. So those are the main things that we think of in a Tanto blade. The second major thing is straight edges, okay? No surprises there, not news to anyone. So essentially that will be the predominant, or essentially the, I wouldn't say the only, but the primary similarities that these knives are going to share. And really there's a lot of differentiation within these factors themselves. So the other thing, let's see, well, let's start there with the main edge. As I discussed, you know, or as I mentioned, we normally think of them as straight edges, and for the most part, that's what you're going to see. It's just the standard, or what everyone expects to see, and there's a purpose for it, and essentially it is just a straight edge. There are some examples with Tanto edges that will feature a recurve, like in this Currahee. You can see here the main edge does have a belly to it. Secondary leading edge is straight angled. Okay, so you know, here's one example of something that is advertised as a Tanto or recurved Tanto, a little bit different. So let's talk about, I guess, what most people focus on, the leading or secondary edge. Okay, now most Tantos, and I'm actually going to, let's move these out of here for a second. Experience has taught me that a piece of wood is a wonderful thing. And I'm not going to do any cutting tests for you guys. It's really just for the camera focus. For some reason, it doesn't like focusing, you know, black and white. Autofocus is a tricky thing. But long story short, let's talk about this leading edge. The leading edge on a Tanto blade often will have what they refer to as a yokote, which is essentially this ridge line which separates the main edge from the secondary edge. On an Emerson, it's very apparent. You could see it right there. And it changes. As you can see right here between the three of these, the Striker, basically it is a straight yokote coming across right there, very late, early on. On the Strider SNG, the yokote is angled, leaving very little for the secondary edge there. On the Emerson style Tanto, it's curved back actually, and basically leading into the secondary edge there. So look for the yokote, look at where it's placed, because that's going to affect the secondary or leading edge. The angle of the leading edge is the next thing I'd like to really discuss, okay? If you look here, each one of these features a different type of leading edge, okay? What does that mean? Essentially, for piercing or thrusting type movements, or, you know, when using the secondary edge, for example, in a cut like this, when you're going like there into any type of material, not necessarily your finger, I don't recommend that, but just to show you, it's how much blade you're actually going to put when cutting in that direction. Okay, in the case of the Striker, that's a pretty good size. You know, it's a very acute angle, or obtuse, depending how you want to look at it. But it is a very angled edge. On the Strider, as you can see, if you put them side by side, you'll see vast differences in how much angle there is. Okay, the Strider, I believe they come in at a 30 degree. I mean, actually no, the Striders are 45 degree angles, I do believe. And again, with the Emerson keeps pretty much the Strider angle, which you can see there. So you can overlay those, much different than the Striker. So that's going to affect how much leading edge you actually have and the angle of approach of that leading edge. The next thing, let's talk about the other fallacy or misconception among Tantos that's widely discussed is the tip strength for piercing type attacks and or prying. Okay, this again is a function of the overall blade design and how much metal is actually left after the grind. Actually, let's take a step back. All right, okay, because it's actually a function of what type of grind you're going to put on the blade too. So like with just about any other type of knife, Tantos come in various grinds. For example, on the Strider we have a full flat grind on this guy, right? From edge to spine, one angle going up, thickening or decreasing depending on how you want to look at it. Same with the leading edge, okay? It is a full flat grind. There's no hollow grind there on the edge. It essentially is what it's a flat grind. On the Emerson, again, we've spoken this at length and you guys that are familiar with it, it is a 3/4 grind with chisel grind, 3/4 chisel grind. So the edge up into there, 3/4 ground, same angle going up, angle repeated on the tip. The Striders also come with a 3/4 grind, and basically edge to about 3/4 the way up the blade, and then same spine thickness for the remainder, okay? And on the edge as well, here on the Strider, if I could get it to focus, you'll see that the edge thickness is much different than, say, on a Striker. And I'm just using the Striker to keep going back to because it is a readily available, commonly referenced, and easily accessible knife that basically anyone can get a hold of and use as a reference point, if they're interested in a Tanto blade. So going back to tip strength for a minute. This may actually go into two parts, just I'm looking at because I still got a lot to talk about, so forgive me for that, but hopefully it'll be interesting. Going back to the tip strength, if we look, the grind here, basically it is again a flat grind at this point. The Striker actually, if you look, it's maybe a 70-degree grind going into a flat grind here with a little bit of a swedge. So again, there's no standard, it just is what it is. But on the leading edge, if you look there, it is a flat grind, edge to spine and edge to the back of the blade. So if you look at it from this perspective, it's a very thin point. There's not much going on there. It's not much different than, per se, a paramilitary rather, right? Very thin edge. You wouldn't want to do much prying with this type of point, okay? So Tantos don't necessarily give you any better point retention there than any other knife. However, you start getting into some of the other designs, and for example, on this Strider SNG, the leading edge, if I could get it to focus, actually let's do this, the leading edge, there isn't much of a leading edge at all. So if you can see here, there's very little space. Actually, if I can get it like this, I know that's going to look a little weird at the angle, but anyway, you can see here, very little leading edge. Going back into the point itself, it's a much thicker point than, say, the Striker, right? You can just look. And the angle is actually different of the sweep of the secondary edge than on the Striker. And if we take it to another extreme, on the 3/4, which I'll speak about later, it's really becoming one of my favorites because that leading edge is so slim, or rather width-wise, there's not much of one. It is essentially a second edge, but just barely hollowed out there or ground down and shaped. You could see there the thickness of the blade remains straight throughout with just a little bit of angling down to the point, okay, with that V grind. So this, on the other hand, will give you a substantially stronger tip than on most knives. Just for comparison, let's bring out that para back again. Look at that, okay? I mean, they start out a little bit different on the thickness, but when you get to the edge, look at that. Essentially, you're getting your full blade stock thickness to the point. We'll talk more about that and come back into part 2. Sorry guys, but still a lot more to talk about. Thanks.